Hello and welcome to Biomechanics of a Jump Shot. In this video, I'll be taking you through the fundamental biomechanics of a basketball jump shot. And then I'll be taking you through a few task constraint drills to improve your shooting technique and form. There is no one perfect way to shoot a basket. There are adaptations of an ideal jump shot that work for all players. However, there are key parts of a jump shot that will vastly improve accuracy. First and foremost, for a successful jump shot, the shooter needs to be balanced, which comes from having a strong base. This is the setup of the jump shot. Starting at the feet, the shooter will flex at the ankles, knees, and hips before extending these joints, which will then begin the kinetic energy transfer into the upper body. Critically important are the flexion and extension of the elbow and the flexion and extension of the wrist. This done fluidly maintains the kinetic energy created from the balanced base all the way up through the body into the ball leaving the fingertips. The amount of flexion of the ankles, knees and hips is dependent on the height and power required of the ball to make the distance of the ring. A right angle should be created from the horizontal floor to your vertical body going 90 degrees upwards. In this frame, I am creating an obtuse angle from the floor to my body, where I am leaning back from the 90 degrees that is ideal. The setup of the jump shot includes displacing the hips to align the body with the ring. This can be different for each player, but 5 to 15 degrees off-center from the ring is a usual displacement. Secondly, the initial arm displacement has to do with reducing the degrees of freedom. To reduce the redundant degrees of freedom, players should keep their elbow close to their body. This is known as the principle of minimal task complexity. Another common mistake is shooting the ball with your right and left arm on either side of the ball. This creates opposing forces when you're trying to get an online shot towards the basket. Ideally, you want your right arm, your shooting arm, to be underneath the ball and you shoot through the ball, letting gravity do the work as you shoot upwards and it falls down towards the basket, keeping a straight line. In this freeze frame, you can see the ideal arm displacement, with my right arm underneath the ball and my left arm as a guide. In 3-point shots, you can see I'm gaining more force through getting more vertical height on my lead. Your shooting hand should finish in front of your face, in line with the side of your head, which is aligned with the basket, always looking up and at the basket. In this freeze frame, you can see that my shooting arm is going across my body in front of my face, which will make my shot offline and increase inaccuracies. Okay, let's talk about the flexion of the wrist. In this shot, you can see my elbow and wrist making a backward C shape, where my wrist is flexed and the ball is just above my eye level. You can see the difference here in this freeze frame, where at my wrist, it is straight whilst shooting and not flexed back, so I am making a backwards L instead of a C. Here is the third and common mistake, over-flexing the elbow. This is way beyond the 90 degrees that is ideal. This will create a lot of inaccuracies because it is a lot harder to maintain the correct strength to apply to the velocity and height of the ball. The distance that the ball is shot from away from your body is also an indicator of accuracy. In this freeze frame, you can see that the ball is further away from my body and I am not flexing my wrist. Alright, the optimal shot angle. So this is measured from the horizontal plane to the release vector of the ball towards the basket. For mid-range to 3-point shot, it is found to be optimally 48 degrees. The next important biomechanical aspect of game-based shooting is the pull-up jump shot. Players need to transfer their directional momentum through a gather step into a jump stop as to make a balanced vertical jump. As you can see here, my angle of incidence with the ground for my jump stop isn't directly 90 degrees. It then transfers from about 50 degrees up until a 90 degree angle, which is ideal. Even though the landing doesn't have an impact on the shot, to reduce risk of injury, players need to soften their landing through once again flexing the ankles, knees, and hips. This is a constraint process with different levels all aiming to make the player proficient during game scenarios. An individual's proficiency in performing physical tasks shares a direct correlation to the extent of preparation that the individual has invested. We can most readily associate the practicing of drills and skills with this notion of planning movements and embedding these plans or outlines in our memory banks. As you begin close to the basket, the player is embedding the feeling of shooting the ball to create smooth and fluid mechanics. As you progress further away from the basket, you will continue the trial and error process, figuring out how much kinetic energy needs to be created during the flexion of your bottom half of your body. Consistency is key with the flexion and extension of elbow and wrist to maintain accuracy. Task degeneracy is present here, because as the drills continue, I become more accurate and start making more shots. Okay, now the player's memory banks contain the motor program of the standing jump shot, they will begin to move into more game-like jump shots. Standing at the top of the three-point line, the player will dribble once or twice to get inside the key and raise up, focusing on transferring forward momentum into vertical momentum in their jump. Here I missed the first 3 shots but find the rhythm and make the next 5 shots. I felt a distinct difference between halting my forward momentum and going straight up rather than continuing forward or overcompensating backwards. This constraint is allowing me to exhibit discovery learning. The next level is shooting one-legged jump shots. This is a great way of exhibiting any timing or release issues in your upper body, as faults are magnified when you don't have as much force created through your base. Once again, I took a few attempts before I found the rhythm and began making shots. This is an organismic constraint. Skill acquisition is identified and defined by energy conservation and proficiency. This is more pronounced in my last drill, as another level of game-based play is added. Often players come off a pick or screen in basketball and have to rotate around the longitudinal axis to square up to the basket before shooting. Subjective affordances came into play in this drill because fatigue began to set in. I had to create more force from my lower and upper body flexion and extension and jump higher because I wasn't getting as much arc on my shot. Biomechanics critical points: flexion and extension of the ankles, knees and hips, flexion and extension of the elbow and wrist, a vertical jump, hip displacement and initial arm displacement with the elbow tucked close to the body, and the vector of the ball release 48 degrees. Conclusively, the drills work on smoothness and fluidity of the shot mechanics to allow for maximum summation of forces.